it's time for Smooth as Cashmere, our segment where we allow Kurt some time to wax poetic, get into what he wants to get into, and talk about what he wants to talk about. So, Kurt, what are we talking about today?
Today, let's discuss pandemic spending. Everybody that's posting on Instagram right now has a product. Have you noticed that?
Yeah,
everybody's selling everything.
A couple of people done got me too. Like,
really?
I mean, not got me, but like I've been like late night surfing, like, oh, that look cool.
Any bad experiences?
I generally am averse to pulling the trigger on like real dumb, like real dumb. But like, it's been a couple times where I'm like, maybe I do need some ripcord camouflage jumpsuit reversible clothes, right? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But I generally avoid it, but I definitely have seen an uptick of like life hack. You need this, so on and so forth. And the marketing is pretty creative because it'll get you if you ain't really paying attention.
I've been noticing a lot of this like self-help stuff. Everybody's like a motivational speaker kind of a thing now. And I'm kind of wondering, is it a result of everyone being so down during the pandemic that everyone now wants to emerge as a new age Instagram pastor now? You know what I mean? Or
how are people monetizing? Like I know that I've seen an abundance of, you know, I'm gonna put this quote up or make this like real happy meme or whatever. But I'm just wondering, you know, I feel like there's a lot of steps between I'm somebody on Instagram who comes up, hey, peace family. I want to just say these words of encouragement for you today. Like from that to like, I got to check. How are they monetizing?
That's a good question. I think there are bigger companies out there that are using their sound bites.
The Russians?
The Russians. Putin and his crew.
Yeah, he said the bigger companies. You mean the Russians?
Take it easy.
Right.
We just started now.
Yeah.
Damn.
Putin, I don't want no smoke.
Jeez.
I don't want
Putin and Beehive, we are friendlies.
We are. We don't want no smoke. Promise you, Putin, we don't want no smoke. You know what I'm talking about? My man Vlad.
Shout out.
And
the horse.
And the horse you rolled in.
Literally.
My bad. Go ahead, bro.
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know how they're getting money, but somebody's getting the check because it's too much happening. Whenever you see things on a level of redundancy that we're seeing online, that means there's some checks flying out there somewhere.
Well, I think the pandemic has, for better or for worse, encouraged people to pursue their dreams. So I've seen an uptick of smaller boutique clothing brands that have come up with people who are selling stuff like in the pandemic. And I'm not really mad at that. The only thing I'm like is, so you had a hot idea. Are you committed to it? Like, are you committed to like seeing it through and making it happen, fulfilling these orders and shipping it out and then coming up with new designs and then making sure that you have inventory and, you know, scaling your business to grow? Or are you just trying to sell some t-shirts for a couple weeks?
I think it's the latter. I think with the whole shutdown of the world, there are a lot of manufacturing companies that just had product that they had to sit on that they now clearly had to give away at a discounted rate. And people are just capitalizing on that abundance of material that's just laying around that's quite frankly been paid for already. Yeah. That people just kind of chuck to the side and say, you know what, we'll jump on the next. Right.
We'll eat that.
So now with that, more people are saying, hey, I can be a store now.
Yeah. I don't have to be a brick and mortar.
No, I can be a store.
I haven't had to be a brick and mortar for years.
I have the plug to the yoga pants. Let's get rich.
Word. So what do you think it does to consumers though?
I think it waters down the appetite of what you want because there's so many different choices and options, right? I think the thing that most people really desire is the least obtainable, right?
Okay.
And that used to be labels and names,
right?
But now it's more so ideas of how you want to look or what you want to buy that you may not necessarily know it exists or not.
What does that mean?
Like myself. I've always wanted...
Me, myself, I generally say, yeah.
Yeah, you know, when I say self, you know.
Yeah.
I've always wanted a Glen Plaid linen suit.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever seen that?
No.
Right. But we know it exists.
Right? Yeah, now that, what you just described, is something I experienced myself because I think about different designs. I'm not a designer, but I am someone who's style conscious at least. I'm like, yo, if I had a Burberry trench coat with a houndstooth lining, ain't nobody seen that before, but I know it exists. I'm like, where can I find it?
And now we're in a space where you can make it.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, do you think that the very unexplored space of like, when I say unexplored, I mean that we haven't had enough time passed to actually study and survey conclusively the long-term effects of the pandemic, but the mental health piece of the pandemic, what do you think that does to consumer habits and consumer spending? Like you're far more of an economist than I am. But I just, in terms, I asked the question because I feel like this is a very conflicting space. Like people have really hesitated to use the word recession, but clearly the Fed is trying to stop us from spending so much money and buying shit. But I think part of the reason why people are buying shit is because they don't feel good.
Right.
And I think part of that is connected to the pandemic. And I think that, it's very hard to still be in the pandemic. You got the president catching COVID, so it ain't going nowhere, right? And tell people, like, don't do or resort to the techniques that you have used to cope for as long as you've used them. But again, I ain't no economist. You probably have a much greater sense than I.
Well, I have a weird opinion about it. So I look at our spending behavior prior to the pandemic as almost like an enraged dog, right? The super duper aggressive pit bull that you got on the huge chain that you know you can't let go.
Tyrone.
Right? So everybody's looking at this dog like, yo, like, make sure you hold that dog. You know what I'm saying?
Hold that dog across the street.
Exactly. So that was the manufacturers. They're looking at the dog like, yo, chill out. You know what I'm saying?
Why? Because it was too much?
It was
too aggressive?
It was super duper aggressive, and it made everyone. I'm gonna use a word whenever I think of money and people, the word coward always pop into my head first, right? And it's almost like, when it comes to finances or anything, when it comes to acquisition, right? You have someone who has the fiscal power to do something, but they don't have the balls, right? And then you'll have someone who don't have enough that's saying, go get it. Right? And those two things, right? Both are cowards in my head because you're not willing to do the work to get the fiscal fortitude to be able to go out and do it the way you telling everybody else to go do it. And you've done all those things like that, but you just scared to pull the trigger. You already aim, never fire type of person. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So in that space, the dog now represents the whole idea of the person who was neither one of those who were actually out here doing what we're talking about, right?
Okay.
So now the product or the manufacturer is now like, if we let that dog go, we may not have enough fight
in us to hold them off,
right? So now that's when you start getting this whole slow down and let's
stop buying so much,
right? Or the way we counter that is because we can't stop you from buying. That's not real. So we're just gonna slow down on production. So now if you want to buy, you're paying twice as much for it. But we don't have to deal with the pit bull because we got 8, that's it. We only got 8.
Yeah.
You bought all 7, that's on you. You deal with the other pit bulls out there.
Deal with that.
Not us.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of weird. It's weird.
One thing I want to ask you about, this is not off topic, but it was actually supposed to be in our shortcuts. You triggered me when you talked about sustainability and sort of like the supply chain. Very similar in the airline industry.
Okay.
It's a really big conversation now, especially I just read a story on a website, a credible one, that talked about flight attendants who are now speaking out about the fact that like the space that they're in is not sustainable from a workforce standpoint. A lot of airlines laid off people and bought out people during the quarantine because it was just so massive. in terms of not being able to shut down, but then not being able to operate at full strength. And so at the time, it was a really, really short-sighted fix to an industry that really so many of us depend on for so much.
Right.
And now that things have picked up, and by picked up, I mean now that people just really don't give up and they just outside traveling, I think we all know the story. I could tell at least 3 stories of, my flight got canceled because some folks timed out, or we had to, wait for the crew to show up because the other crew wasn't available, or, the travel industry right now, the airline industry is very much so feeling the effects of that lack of sustainability that you talked about from a marketplace standpoint. But what I find interesting about that piece, the airline piece, the travel piece, is that's not an industry where there's production. It's a service industry. So even service industries are in a lot of different ways experiencing those challenges that really come from this shift in market demand in ways that aren't just limited to production, your clothing, your textiles, your manufacturers.
Well, again, like everything else in the world, once you've created a narrative that people can buy into, it trickles down into everything. Nothing just stays the way it was intended to be, right? Everything, it's like a splatter of paint. You may have wanted it to hit this particular brick on the wall, but you threw a lot of paint.
You throw a lot of paint.
You threw a lot of paint. So how do you tell that other brick up there that it's not red now?
You don't get no paint.
Exactly. It doesn't work that way. And I think that's one of the flaws sometimes of popular opinion, right? It's like when you give someone an avenue to connect to something, you can't get mad when they do.
And you can't control.
You can never control.